limits on legal immigration. The president joins 2 Republican senators to unveil new legislation. We're at the White House with the latest on the changes. White House foreign policy. One of President Trump's advisors tells us how the U.S. will deal with the threat of North Korea as the U.S. tests a long-range missile. Back to work. Pope Francis resumes his weekly meeting with pilgrims and tourists. We have a report from Rome. And Prince Philip retires. A look at the man who has stood by Queen Elizabeth's side for nearly 70 years. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, August 2nd, 2017. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for News from a Catholic Perspective. I'm Wyatt Goolsby in for Lauren Ashburn. President Trump backs legislation that would limit legal immigration. The president joining 2 GOP senators to unveil the bill today. Correspondent Mark Irons has the details from the White House. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Wyatt. GOP leaders show no sign of wanting to vote on immigration this year, and Democrats are quickly dismissing the bill. But supporters say it would raise wages and create jobs. And the president says it's another promise he's making good on.
As a candidate, I campaigned on creating a merit-based immigration system that protects U.S. workers and taxpayers, and that is why we are here today, merit-based.
President Trump is embracing a bill that would create an immigration system based more on merit and skills rather than family ties. Its sponsors are Senator David Perdue of Georgia and Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas. Cotton calls the current system a disaster.
Our legal immigration system should accomplish 2 main goals. One, it should help American workers get a decent pay raise and have a higher standard of living. And 2, it should help promote economic growth, make America more competitive in the world. Our current system simply doesn't do that.
The White House says the law puts American workers first by limiting unskilled labor from entering the U.S., ending a preference for extended family and adult children, and by slashing the number of refugees in half. But the Senate has largely ignored the measure, first introduced in February. No lawmakers have signed on as co-sponsors, and Democrats say cutting legal immigration doesn't make sense. The U.S. Catholic Conference of Bishops supports comprehensive immigration reform. The bishops say their concern is the impact policies will have on immigrant families and vulnerable individuals living in the country. This bill has some support in the Senate. I reached out to Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, who says he supports an immigration system based on people's skills, and he's glad to see the president be open to this approach. Wyatt?
Mark, I understand this topic dominated the White House press briefing today, and things got quite heated. Tell us about it.
That's right, Wyatt. Stephen Miller, the president's senior advisor for policy, fielded questions and had a contentious exchange with CNN's Jim Acosta. The White House and CNN seem to have a history of clashing, so that feud seems to be continuing.
And you were there, correspondent Mark Irons, to watch it all happen at the White House. Thanks so much, Mark. President Trump signs what he calls a seriously flawed bill imposing new sanctions on Russia. The legislation is aimed at punishing Moscow for interfering in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. The law also imposes financial sanctions against Iran and North Korea. Republicans set the stage for new drama on Capitol Hill. They want to push tax reform. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi says it's one of the biggest battles to follow health care. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Wyatt. President Trump is laying out an ambitious timetable for overhauling the tax code. He wants Congress to pass it this fall. Now, Republicans aren't giving us many details, but they are providing an overview. Republicans promise to cut your taxes.
The advice that I've given President Trump is really 2 words on tax reform: bold and simple. I think there's power to bold simplicity. Ideally, I'd like to see a simple flat tax where we abolish the IRS. Now, I don't know if we'll go that far or not.
Republicans say their plan will help Americans keep more of their money and lower business taxes to encourage them to stay in the country. Democrats wrote a letter to Republicans saying tax reform should be bipartisan and shouldn't be a handout to the richest Americans.
It should be reform. It shouldn't just be tax cuts that blow up the deficit. It should be a way to reform our tax system so that it's more efficient, it leads to growth, and it leads to better opportunities for middle-class Americans.
The last time a big bipartisan tax reform bill passed was 1986, when President Ronald Reagan was still in the White House. But times have changed.
Well, I think the letters signed by 45 Democrats indicate that they take too many principles off the table to start with. And so if we want to have job increasing, take-home pay increasing tax reform, we have to do it through reconciliation.
Reconciliation is that rare Senate procedure requiring only 51 votes, not the usual 60, allowing Republicans to go it alone, like they tried to do with health care.
You couldn't get your act together on health care. How are you going to do it on tax reform?
Well, I don't think the final chapter has been written on health care, but I personally think tax reform is easier because we're not dealing with as big a mess as we were under Obamacare. And I think the divisions within our conference are probably not as stark on tax reform.
President Trump plans to travel across the country promoting tax reform. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says there will be regular committee hearings and open bipartisan debate on this topic, but he admits to pass this, it'll likely be only Republicans or just a few Democrats supporting it.
Correspondent Jason Calvi at the Capitol. Thanks, Jason. The U.S. Air Force launches a test missile from California today. It comes amid tensions with North Korea as that nation develops its own intercontinental ballistic missile system. Before the president signed the Russia sanction bill, I spoke to one of the president's deputy assistants outside a noisy White House where construction is taking place. Joining us from the White House is Sebastian Gorka, deputy assistant to the president. Dr. Gorka, North Korea launched 2 intercontinental ballistic missiles in July. Tensions are pretty high. Yesterday, President Trump said we'll handle North Korea. What does he mean by that?
Exactly what he said. We will handle it. This is a president that doesn't just talk. He doesn't facilitate bad actors like the last administration. But at the same time, we don't give our playbook away. It's a bad idea when you're playing poker. It's an even worse idea when you're dealing with regimes like North Korea. So until this moment, we have exerted what we call a program of peaceful pressure. We had high expectations after the Mar-a-Lago summit that Beijing would step up to the plate and exert its inordinate pressure on Pyongyang. That did not happen. The president is displeased with the lack of results from the Mar-a-Lago summit. So now we're going to look at other options.
Secretary of State Rex Tillerson says North Korea is not our enemy in the sense that the U.S. is not looking for a regime change. So Tillerson, as you mentioned, wants help from China. What could China do? In other words, what pressure can China imply?
China has absolutely massive potential to help de-escalate the problems on the Korean Peninsula. So whether it's diplomatic, whether it's economic, whether it's discussions, China is in the driving seat right now. But we will not allow the national security of our partners or of our citizens to be held hostage by inaction by China. China can help. We will see if they do.
The president says he intends to sign a bill imposing sanctions against Russia that was passed by Congress, but the president says he's not completely pleased by it in the sense that he thinks that sanctions won't help the administration's diplomatic efforts with Russia. In your view, what's the best strategy to use with Russia?
Let's quote the president himself. In one of the last press conferences he gave in Trump Tower, he was asked about future relations with the Kremlin, with Vladimir Putin. And the president gave the best expression of how we look at relations with Moscow. And he said, in theory, we would like to have better relations with Russia. Remember, Russia is a nuclear nation. It's a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. So we'd like to have better relations with a country that has geopolitical importance. However, he added, right now, it doesn't look very likely, and if that is the case, so be it. So, you know, the president is a pragmatist. He'd like to be able to collaborate. It is a very, very good sign that we have a continuing ceasefire in Syria, which we negotiated with Jordan and with Russia. So that's a good sign. But that doesn't mean that things are perfect with the relations we have with Moscow.
Well, finally, Congress continues to probe into Russian meddling and possible collusion with the Trump campaign, but you say the media is ignoring another story about Obama officials. Tell us more about that.
The Clinton campaign's connections to Russia, herself, Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, had to sign off on the 20% of uranium sold to Russia as her husband was getting speaking fees of $500,000 from Russia, as her foundation was getting donations from the same companies. If you want to look at the real story of the perversion of the intelligence community, It's what we have to label as the unmasking scandal. It is coming out that more and more top officials, including Ben Rhodes, including the Obama administration's ambassador to the United Nations, were unmasking U.S. individuals' names on intelligence intercepts in an unprecedented fashion. And now we hear that they were even relaxing the rules on unmasking the names of members of Congress caught up in intelligence intercepts. That, if that is proven to be factually true, it is a massive scandal that will make Watergate look like a small incident in the kindergarten.
So many important issues on President Trump's plate. Sebastian Gorka, Deputy Assistant to the President, thanks so much for talking with us.
Thank you, Wyatt.
The Senate votes overwhelmingly to confirm Christopher Wray as the new FBI director.
On this nomination, the yeas are 92, the nays are 5. The nomination is confirmed.
Wray was a top Justice Department official during the George W. Bush administration. He was recommended unanimously by the Senate Judiciary Committee last month. He succeeds James Comey, who was fired by President Trump in May. The Pentagon announces 2 U.S. service members are dead after an attack in southern Afghanistan. The Taliban is claiming responsibility. The terror group claims 2 armored tanks were destroyed and a total of 15 foreign soldiers were killed on the outskirts of the city of Kandahar. The province was the headquarters for the Taliban during their 5-year rule that ended with the U.S. invasion in 2001. 4 men are convicted of plotting to carry out a terror attack in the U.K. Authorities caught one of the men after he began working for a firm set up by undercover police. Officers found the evidence in his car, including a partially constructed pipe bomb and ammunition. The search quickly led to the arrest of the 4 men in August of last year. The men will be sentenced tomorrow. A prisoner swap between Lebanon's militant Hezbollah group and a Syrian affiliate of al-Qaeda. 3 Hezbollah fighters were released early this morning in return for the release of 3 al-Qaeda fighters. The exchange is part of an agreement between Hezbollah and the al-Qaeda affiliate group. Pope Francis says being a Christian means looking for the light even when the world is enveloped in darkness.
La vita della Chiesa è contaminazione di luce.
The Holy Father says that in putting on Christ at baptism, Christians become children of light. That light gives us new hope. After a month off, Pope Francis resumed his weekly audiences today. Due to scorching heat in Rome, the gathering was held inside the Vatican. EWTN's Rome Bureau Chief Alan Holdren was at the audience with the Holy Father this morning. Alan, I understand the Pope gave us all some homework today. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's right, Wyatt. He was speaking about the natural, about birth, about how we're all born twice. First, we're born to natural life, and then we're born to Christian life through our baptisms. He was talking about baptism and how it's the moment that we're contaminated, he said, by the light of Christ. And as such, that being born into Christian life, we should celebrate that moment. So he gave us all homework. He reminded us twice during the audience to go out and look for the date that we were baptized so that we can mark that occasion.
This is the first time in weeks we've seen Pope Francis at a Wednesday general audience. How did he look?
Why, he looked pretty good for being a man of 80 years old. He looked rested. He's taken the majority of the month of July off. No major occasions, no major appointments. It's going to be the same for the month of August. He's taking it easy, even if he's got these general audiences and there are thousands of people there. There were 7,000 people there this morning. You can see he really plays off the crowd. He loves being among the people. He was receiving roses, messages, letters from people, taking selfies. He really looked like he was in his element, and he looked relaxed and comfortable.
All of us hope to look so good at 80 years old. It was 1 year ago, last week, the Pope was in Krakow, Poland for World Youth Day. How did he remember it or recall it today?
Well, Wyatt, he thanked God for the fruits of that occasion. He said that he hoped that young people would continue to be sentinels of hope for future generations based on their experience at World Youth Day. There will be another Youth Day coming up, International World Youth Day. It's going to be celebrated in Panama City, Panama in 2019. It's celebrated across the planet in dioceses on a local level every year, but it's only every 2 or 3 years that the Pope celebrates with international youth in a major occasion like that one.
Well, like I say, I'm sure so many people around the world are looking forward to that event. And of course, for us, it's nice to see Pope Francis back to his regular general audience. Alan Holdren, EWTN Rome Bureau Chief. Thanks so much, Alan.
Thank you, Wyatt.
And a special guest at the Vatican today, Italian opera singer Andrea Bocelli, with a group he started called Voices of Haiti. The foundation is giving young Haitians the opportunity to sing while bringing attention to the country's many challenges. Coming up, a roundup of some of the biggest stories happening in the nation's capital. Plus, a new study on what a baby in the womb can understand. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsby in for Lauren Ashburn. General John Kelly is now on day 3 in his new position as White House Chief of Staff. With all the staff shakeups on Pennsylvania Avenue, our next guest will help us break down all the news. Melissa Quinn is a reporter for the Washington Examiner. So Melissa, working at the White House seems to be like a revolving door. People are in and out. What can you expect with General John Kelly now in charge as the White House Chief of Staff?
Well, I think what a lot of people are hoping General Kelly will do is he'll bring some much needed discipline and order to the West Wing. Obviously, we've seen, like you said, a rotation of characters coming in and out. We've seen a number of power centers that are currently operating in the West Wing. And I think the goal for General Kelly, and also the hope for his success, is that he takes those power centers, condenses it into one to where all White House staff, aides, and advisors, if they want to talk to the president, if they want to propose some policy to the president, they have to go through him.
That's going to be a big challenge for any person, much less John Kelly. As we reported earlier, the president has signed a congressional bill that sanctions Russia, Iran, North Korea, but the president says he hasn't been too keen on this bill. Do you think that this will send a message to the world, or sends a message to the world, that that president's not fully in sync with Congress on these issues?
I think so. He came out with his signing statement just minutes after he went ahead and signed that legislation, which I think is important to note, that where we've seen President Trump come out with sort of these big ceremonies filled with the media and cameras, a lot of fanfare, President Trump signed this Russia sanctions bill relatively quietly and behind closed doors. But in his statement this morning about why he ultimately did decide to sign the Russia sanctions bill, he said that it was deeply flawed. He said that there were constitutional issues with it, and certainly seemed to signal that he, although it did earn his signature, was not pleased with the legislation. But I think the important thing to remember here is that this bill passed overwhelmingly in both the House and the Senate. Even if President Trump did veto the plan, there was a very good chance that that veto was going to be overridden by Congress. So ultimately, it seemed like he wanted to send a signal to Russia, Iran, and North Korea that he was taking a hard line, but he's not entirely pleased with the contents of that bill.
Okay, let's turn to immigration. At the White House, of course, today the president is backing this bill that would create an immigration system based more on skills as opposed to family ties. It hasn't yet picked up a lot of traction in the Senate. Do you think it has a chance?
Well, the Senate is going to be a very big animal, not only for this bill, but any other significant piece of legislation, particularly one that has the president's backing. The bill obviously has the backing of President Trump, Senators Perdue and Senators Cotton, who are the co-sponsors and introduced the bill, a different version of the bill earlier this year, but already it is facing some opposition, not only from some Senate Democrats, but also from Senate Republicans. Lindsey Graham came out just earlier today, said he disagreed with the bill. We have to remember that Republicans hold 52 seats. They need 60 votes to break that legislative filibuster, so they have to somehow convince at least 8 Democrats to come onto their side, and that's a really tall task.
Absolutely, tall task for the Republican Party. Melissa Quinn, reporter for the Washington Examiner, thanks so much for talking with us.
Thank you.
Unborn babies are able to distinguish between different languages as early as a month before they are born. That's according to a new study at Kansas University. The study finds children at an average of 8 months in the womb are able to tell the difference between someone speaking English and someone speaking Japanese. It happens even if the languages are being spoken by the same person. The team leader for the study says the finding was extremely exciting for language development research. To read more on the study, including the technology used for it, visit our partners at CatholicNewsAgency.com. Up next, why some women say the feminist movement is failing their sex, plus bidding farewell to Prince Philip as the Duke of Edinburgh retires. Before today's general audience, the Holy Father met with the managers and players of a German soccer team. Pope Francis invited the team to be athletes for peace. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsby in for Lauren Ashburn. Some feminists are expressing outrage after a Democrat in the House said the party will not withhold financial support for pro-life candidates. But not all women agree. In fact, my next guest is proud to say she does not identify as a feminist. Melissa Braunstein is a contributor for The Federalist and a former State Department speechwriter. So Melissa, you don't call yourself a feminist. Why not?
I don't call myself a feminist. I feel like the movement, while it did great things in the past, does not stand for me. It does not represent me and all the things that it stands for today. As someone who's put my calling as a mother before my career at this point, I don't feel like the movement represents me. I feel like the movement is very focused on a sense of victimhood, and I don't feel like a victim. I feel like it has not been, in recent years, so men-friendly, and some of my favorite people, starting with my husband and my father, are men. So for a variety of reasons, I feel like the feminist movement does not speak for me.
Well, maybe we can touch on that a little bit more, because you're a professional, you're a wife, mother of 3,
yes,
as you'd mentioned. Tell me a little bit about what's happened in your life, and what do you think the reaction that you've gotten just based on the choices that you've made?
I'd say that there are people who've told me, first of all, as a conservative, that makes me not a woman or a questionable woman. And there are people who have been, I think it's an interesting split, telling people that you're a mother and this is what you spend most of your time doing, because you definitely find people who are very supportive, and then you have people who see it as a waste of your education. And I find that offensive. I feel like this is something I've chosen to do. This is going to be the most important thing I will do while I'm here on this earth, is doing a good job raising my children. I'm very proud to be doing it, and I find it very fulfilling, and I am much more comfortable with the traditional feminist idea that we should be supporting all women's choices. But unfortunately, I think a lot of people who identify with the feminist movement today would say that my choices are not either valid or the correct ones.
Well, and like you said earlier, you had mentioned that there's been so many good things that have happened out of feminism in the past, in past decades. What about those who say today, though, that there are so many more issues that need to be tackled, the gender pay gap and things like that?
There are always things that can be done. There's always more work to do. But I would say the gender pay gap, if you look at the numbers, the wage issue is actually a lot closer. It's more like 95 cents on the dollar if you actually work out women who take time out of the workforce like me. It's actually much closer to parity, so that I feel like is overblown, and it doesn't do women a good service to say that it's a 77 cents on the dollar disparity. That's been debunked. The other thing is, that's not my major issue, and if feminists really wanted to unite women across the political spectrum, I think there are a lot of other issues they could take on. They're just choosing not to.
Well, it's so interesting to hear your perspective. Melissa Braunstein, contributor for The Federalist, thanks so much for talking with us.
Thank you.
Finally tonight, Queen Elizabeth's husband, Prince Philip, officially retires. It comes after 7 decades in the public eye. The Duke of Edinburgh greets Royal Marines who just completed a 1,600-mile trek. The Duke, also known as Prince Philip, announced in May he would be retiring from engagements after more than 65 years of supporting Queen Elizabeth II in her role and carrying out duties related to his charities. Since his wife became queen, Prince Philip has conducted more than 22,000 solo engagements, delivered nearly 5,500 speeches, and was president or member of more than 700 organizations. And while today was the Duke's final official engagement, royal watchers say it may not be the last time we'll see him.
I'm sure he'll turn up for various jobs with the Queen here and there, but the nice thing is now that he can pick and choose them and relax when he wants to.
Martin Palmer, a friend of the Prince, says his role was key.
I think his greatest achievement has been to support the Queen through probably one of the most tempestuous periods that the monarchy has ever been through.
An accomplished sportsman, the Prince played polo regularly until 1971. He earned his Royal Air Force wings in 1953, his helicopter wings in 1956, and his private pilot license in 1959. And today, with 3 cheers for Prince Philip and 1 last wave, the Duke enters retirement. The Queen and Prince Philip will celebrate their 70th wedding anniversary in November. Pretty incredible. Well, we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Wyatt Goolsby. We'll be back here tomorrow for more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night, and God bless.